Hello, everybody, and welcome back and welcome to Third Wave Now. Thank you for being here and tuning in wherever and whenever you are. So, firstly, thank you to everybody who took the time to listen to our last session, and thank you to those of you who have subscribed. It's very kind of you, and for those of you who left comments, Bero and Mayatrick, much love to you both. So today, before we dive into spiritual guardianship, the first step in spiritual parenting, I think, is the title of the podcast. I just wanted to answer a couple of questions I received about the last time and some of the terms I used. And please, if anybody has any questions in the future, don't hesitate to drop me a line or leave a comment or email me if you're listening through my podcast. Very, very happy to answer any questions anybody may have. So both of the questions I had were very similar in terms of what is this? And the first one was, what's an indigo child? Well, the indigo children are a soul lineage, a group of like-minded people with very similar traits, a type of starseed, if you will, who came in as a dispersed collective across the planet to meet their own individual soul missions, but also as a group too. And we'll just dive into some of the characteristics. I'm sure some of you will maybe relate, maybe resonate with what I'm about to talk about. So, in line with all starseeds, there's this sort of underlying feeling or sense of not being from here, which many of your children, actually the children in your lives, may have this feeling. They may not be able to verbalize it. They may not necessarily be able to communicate it, much as I wasn't as a child. And this feeling, if not probably kept in mind and discussed when appropriate, can very quickly turn into a feeling of going from not feeling that you're from here to not feeling that you belong here. And that can cause all sorts of isolation and sadness and misery. And for many of the indigos, that is true. They also have a very strong feeling in extraterrestrials, in supernatural activity, phenomena, theory as well. And they also, they're very unsuperficial, always in search of the truth. If we imagine Fox Mulder from the X-Files, to me, that certainly typifies an indigo child down to a T, really. The truth is out there. They're also incredibly perceptive, and some are telepathic, empathic, and one of the sentients or all of the sentients. And they also feel quite special and destined to be here. Not in an arrogant way as such, although perhaps some could perceive that to be the case. But they know they're here for a reason, and they hold true to this. They are incredibly creative, and again, this is true of a lot of soul urges. But I think what particularly separates the indigo children is this need to stick it to the man. Again, think Fox Mulder, right? And they can feel quite antagonistic towards false authority. So they enjoy questioning the powers that be and challenging the powers that be. Real change makers and rebels of the cosmos, if you like. So that, in a very brief nutshell, is our indigo children. And I certainly do feel some of those commonalities myself. Nextly, what are Blu-ray children? See, we're kind of following on our theme here. Nothing to do with DVDs, you'll be glad to know. They are actually very similar to Indigo children too. Although in this particular fraction of the rainbow, they are ultra empathic, often speak light language. I don't know if you've heard light language yourself. I think there's certainly some YouTubers who demonstrate this, and we can all do it. It's not a particular gift. It's just sort of letting sound come out of you in a very aligned with source kind of way. But check that out yourselves if it's something that resonates with you. Resonate. Do explore the whole concept of light language. It's very beautiful. Anyway, that's a slight aside. Let's get back to our Blu-ray children, shall we? Along with the empathy, they're very adaptable and durable. That their focus is on damaged DNA, I guess, and this sort of ancestral karmic release. So quite often our Blu-rays are put into very chaotic and turbulent families and family communal structures, and they're there for a reason, very sensitive to their environment. I think that the trouble really with our Blu-ray babies is that they can struggle in expressing themselves and relating to others, because they're quite different to the chaos they're in the middle of. But equally, when they're standing in their power, they're able to transmute a lot of lower vibrational frequencies, very closely linked to Saint Germain and the Violet Flame, as well as Archangel Michael. So they, as we just said, they can struggle a little bit to come into their power, and many don't actually fully realize themselves until this quite magical internal shift, when they become themselves and they activate those dormant codes within their etheric energy, within their etheric DNA. Some of the issues they can have along the way, as I'm sure you can guess, having pointed out everything we have thus far, they can self-impose isolation and can also be incredibly susceptible to addiction in one way or another. Again, the escapism kicking in, really, and sadly they're more prone to entity attachment, because they are so light. These Blu-ray children, they can't escape what they are, which is really quite beautiful. And don't other people and other things know it? Boundaries are key for our Blu-ray children, because they are so adaptable, and are perhaps used to pretty shitty environments. They forget what they are entitled to. They forget that actually healthy boundaries and structures are what's best for them. If they have this natural protection around them, if they're able to cultivate these boundaries, they can then really step into their light. They can empower their light and be what they were here to be, really. It's just quite marvelous. So yes, that was our whistle-stop tour of the Indigos and the Blu-rays, and perhaps next time we should take a look at the Rainbow Children and the Crystal Children, who, again, as you can possibly guess, encompass the whole colour spectrum. And I do believe that we should have an element of caution with these starseed categories, because we can run into duality here if we pigeonhole ourselves too much. And I believe that ultimately we all have the full spectrum within us. It's just how much is dominant in our personalities and our traits. So do take a healthy interest, and naturally some will speak to you more than others do. But just keep an open mind where our star seed and lineages are concerned. Okay, so do you remember, cast your minds back a wee bit, we mentioned in our last session together that the one thing we need to do for ourselves and for our children, do you remember I said there was one thing that you possibly aren't doing? So if we take this forward slightly, one of the things we're trying to achieve with the children in your life is the ability to own their own big emotions, to assimilate them, and to grow and develop their own thoughts, their own thinking, and their own spirituality. Remember, we don't want to teach children what to think, but we do want to have some massively positive input in how they think. So if we can get this process in place and they own their emotions and they grow and they're free thinkers, this will naturally have the effect of making them feel calmer, more in control, safer, and able to take on board so much more than if this weren't the case. So I guess my question to you is, how are you doing on that front? Be honest now. You are a role model, and also for yourself, now is the time to evaluate how well you're managing this process internally. And again, now is the time to open up, I think, the process of forgiveness and healing of the past, for sure. And what I would like to do is devote these next few sessions, these next few podcasts, to this whole process and to you guys with specifically, shall we say, clearing the decks, and getting you more in touch with yourselves. And perhaps as we go along, you'll make some connections between how you parent, how you experience parenting, and how past parenting has influenced all of this, really. And subsequently, what I would like to do is produce a guided meditation for you. Hopefully that all sounds like something you guys can get on board with and benefit from. And once we've kind of done that deep dive into ourselves, and we're feeling in a better place, we can then look at our parenting and how we can grow in terms of that, how we can deal with our own emotions before we look to be dealing with our children's. And I do think so much of parenthood isn't necessarily talked about. There's a lot of expectations on parents and a lot of false expectations. I like to keep it real here, and I don't think anything is off the cards in terms of discussion. I fully appreciate the challenge parenting can be to ourselves. We're confronted with so much, and I think it takes a real brave soul to look at themselves, to evaluate where they're at in life and see, right, how can I do better for me in order to do better for my child? And so I hope I can really be of some assistance to those who are going through this, and let you know you're not alone, and to help out a little bit, I guess. So shall we begin? I think 15 minutes in, perhaps we should. Many, if not all of us, have made mistakes with our parenting. And it can be uncomfortable to think about. So as you're listening, if you get to feeling a bit uptight, if you feel triggered in any way, take some deep breaths. If you need to refresh yourselves, yeah, do what you have to do to stay calm and stay cool. But just know there's no judgment here, right? I'm only able to be sat here talking to you about this through experiential learning of the highest order. Okay? So be calm, be cool. We're all in it together. So I think there have been plenty of times where we've had aversion to wanting to play with our children, impatience and annoyance. I mean, seriously, how long is it taking you to put on that pair of socks, eat your breakfast, do your homework, etc., etc.? I think we've all had a quick fix, put some sugar in their system just for some peace. And I also think that, perhaps this is a big one for some of you, resentment. It can be a big one, but we don't talk about it because we feel so much shame, and it's like this vicious loop that we go on. We feel the resentment, we feel the shame, it builds up in us, and we go round and round on this conveyor belt. And I just think, enough, guys. I think we deserve better, and I think our children deserve better. So we have to normalize our feelings first of all, before we can even talk about it. We have to open up our hearts as well as our minds. And I do understand that this fear of being judged makes us bury our feelings deep. And really, it's our bodies being quite clever. I don't know how much you guys know about wounding and how we hold on to wounds. And there's some real kind of backwards logic going on here. I've learnt. I think was it Rumi, the poet, who said the wound is where the light gets in. And this is true, but we kind of have to let it first. But yeah, we do this, our body does this really sort of clever survival thing. And, if you imagine your body and your ego, which essentially sees fear everywhere and tries to keep you safe, your ego isn't just I look damn fine in this dress. Your ego tries to protect you. It's very kind of fear-based mind. And subconsciously, you will be saying to yourself, I really need to hold on to this big wound because I'm managing this big wound and I am dealing with this big wound. If I open up and allow this big wound to be seen and go, something bigger and something scarier is bound to come along and take its place. So that's the internal struggle right there. Trying to get yourself to part with what's hurt you in the past. And this doesn't just apply to parents, by the way. This applies to everybody. I'd say everybody who suffered a massive trauma, but I don't think that's true. I think everybody carries an inner wound somewhere. So that's why we bury our feelings. So just know, when you're feeling this resistance, it's understandable, and it's important to let yourself feel safe. It's important to make sure that whenever you're kind of thinking these things over, that you put yourself in a safe environment, to allow your mind to unravel and to really assess where you are. But that's wounds for you, and we will undoubtedly be revisiting this at a later date. So as well as these sorts of feelings of patience, annoyance, resentment, conversely, our parenting can leave us over anxious. It can leave us nervous, fearful, especially as our children grow. Are they safe? Have I taught them well? Until we come full circle to fear of being alone, with empty nest syndrome. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute this is the entirety of parenting. Of course it's not. But it is a huge fear-based perspective that we really need to heal and clear. And we can do that. We absolutely can do that. And just let me reiterate here, if you're feeling slightly triggered here, there's plenty of spiritual guidance therapists out there. Do source somebody you feel safe with. And I myself offer remote sessions for parents and all sorts of family stuff. So get in touch if you need me, okay? You're not alone. I kind of have to keep reiterating that. I think I would pretty much stake a large sum of money on you being a conscientious parent, because, you're listening to a podcast like this. So let me tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, you have always done the best you can with the resources that you had at the time. Of course, this is true. And I also think we can potentially overanalyze our fears in terms of the negative impact that we've had on our children to a degree. So congratulate yourself for wanting to make good choices, for wanting to make the best choices for yourself and the children in your life. So given all of this that we all have on our plate to a degree, do you not think perhaps forgiveness is where we start? Forgiveness and compassion for our past self? Both you and your children will benefit massively from this. And again, let's bring it back to big emotions. I will use that term quite often. I'm so sorry if it annoys you, but it's such a massive part of the foundational work that we have to do before we kind of go on to like super cool fun stuff. This is what we really do need to address, she says in true second wave style. So yeah, big emotions, you have them for better or worse. The more you have that you aren't able to regulate, quite often will lead to a barrier between you and the children in your life. You will perhaps only show that the perfect or authoritative side, when really your child kind of needs to see the whole you, I mean, your kid's probably seen you on the loo at some point, so just remember that, right? Every aspect you can embody safely and share safely with your child. You broaden their baseline in terms of experience that they've met in a safe environment. This imperfection, so to speak, is normalized behavior by you demonstrating yourself as you are. Any sort of future fear or judgment your child may have when they meet this sort of behavior in others is limited. So what I mean here is we manage the process and we regulate ourselves. And I'm not saying for a second you should be untoward where your children are concerned, but equally it's really good for children to see adults correct themselves and to demonstrate how to correct yourself. And I don't mean that in a punitive way at all. I mean I'm out of my zone here. How do I get back into alignment? It's experiential learning for your children. So please do bear that in mind anytime you've made a mistake. Show your children how you bring yourself back. Of course, over time, the more we do this process, how do I bring myself back to me? How do I come back to me? How do I feel good? Ultimately, the less we will have to do it. Remember, we discussed very briefly the whole concept of neuroplasticity, creating new thoughts, new thought patterns. The more we practice something, the more we become it. And you just have to look at the work of the likes of Dr. Joe Dispenza to see just how capable our minds are, our brains are, in terms of creating these new ways and new reality for ourselves. And equally, if we allow it, just how we can go down the same rabbit holes over and over again. So we do have a choice. We always have a choice. We can forget that sometimes. So in subsequent podcasts, when we come on to how we manage our own processes in terms of anger and fear and shame and things like that, you will see this link that I will keep bringing in, that there is a different way we can get out of this automatic fight, flight response. We can send our nervous system back into a happier, more aligned, more connected place. But of course, it takes practice. Um, for many, it can take quite a while, but it can be done. And every time you do it, you'll feel a little bit more chuffed with yourself, a little bit more happy. And this will naturally, reflect out to your child. So it's a good thing to begin. And it's a good thing for your child to learn, I think, from you. So we're about to hit the half-hour mark now. I think we are almost done for this particular session. But what I would encourage you to do is, after sort of taking time to listen to what we've discussed, understandably this may throw some big emotions up at you. So this would be a really, really good time for you to journal. And we'll be talking about journaling in a future podcast when we come on to, how we create our affirmations and exactly what this does neurologically and neurolinguistically for us. So I would thoroughly encourage you begin just to write stuff down. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't necessarily have to be more than a couple of sentences. But I would encourage you to get this stuff down on paper. And the kind of things I would suggest you look at is sort of, which emotions do you struggle with? What's trickiest for you to handle, and what can potentially put you in that shame loop that we talked about a little while ago. But also, if you could possibly imagine you being able to be in touch with your higher self, if you were able to receive that unlimited love and compassion from your higher self, which, trust me, is trying really hard to give you, how do you think you would feel about your parenting then, in terms of how you've parented in the past and in terms of how you'd like to parent now? And I would also like you to have a think about how good a parent you are. Think of all those times when you really knocked it out of the park. You may struggle to remember that. That's cool. It can simply be the fact you've kept your child loved, you've kept your child fed and clothed and housed all their lives. Love is kind of enough, guys. So have a think about both of these aspects of parenting, and how we can potentially forge a way forward from it, because we will be revisiting parenting again next time, obviously, and we've just kind of begun to skim the surface of how we want to raise our vibration, and obviously, in order to raise our vibration, it's time to let go of stuff that no longer serves us, really. And a huge part of that is, as we mentioned earlier, not only how we parent, but how we were parented and how our parents were parented, and we can go on and go on and go on like little Russian dolls. And this is our karmic DNA we're talking about, our patterning that we've kind of had to work our way through. So yeah, have a good think about this, guys, because it's all important stuff. But ultimately, where we want to get to is this. I would really love it if you could begin taking seriously and allowing the idea of you, the parent, and you, the person, being perfect in your entirety, just as you are, because you are perfect and you are loved. It's simply allowing yourself to realize this, which you will do soon, I promise you. So thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. And I look forward to catching you again in a couple of weeks' time. If anybody has any questions, do let me know, either by email or comments. And yeah, lovely talking with you and spending time with you. Take care, and remember, you are much loved.